score. Jaws pinball, the game we adore. He's a killer machine, hungry for the prey, a ravenous shark, ready to play with silver jaws and an appetite so grand. Jaws pinball, it's time to take a stand.
Second time we've done this, actually.
Oh, Jaws pinball.
I'm here with a very special guest, Elizabeth Gieske from Stern Pinball. Thank you so much for coming to this and to talk with us today. And I want to just start right out of the gate here. Go right to who you are for who might be listening and doesn't know. I just announced where you're from, but tell us a little bit about yourself, Elizabeth.
Yeah, I mean, I work for Stern. I live in Kentucky, so I'm fully remote. But I write software for pinball, and I worked on Jaws, and I just worked on D&D, which was really cool. When I first joined Stern, they were in the talks about D&D, and when I heard about it, or actually it was I first started in the interview. They asked what board games I play, and I'm like, well, I play this and that, but I got really into D&D, which isn't a board game, it's a tabletop game. And they're like, oh, okay, they kind of perked up there. And I'm like, oh, great, a bunch of nerds, and I'm going to fit right in. And I didn't even realize, but they were in the talks with D&D. So they're like, all right, you're going to be working on Jaws for a while, but we got this other project that you might want to check out afterwards. So I was like, okay, cool. So that was fun. So yeah, big nerd, big pinball fan. I was super competitive in the scene and played a lot of pinball here and there. And
70.
yeah.
I thought you were 75th in the world IFPA ranked. Is that what I saw?
No, I think my top was like 140. I never broke 100. I was in the top 200 for a good bit. Although since working at Stern, I've kind of been not playing as much competitive, but hopefully I can still jam whenever.
That's still good. I mean, there was somebody in the chat earlier, Boots, that said he had played pinball against you somewhere or with you in some tournament.
Yeah, I think Cincinnati. That sounds familiar. Mm-hmm.
So you started, when did you decide you wanted to do programming or get into code? When did this all begin?
Yeah, that was in college. I didn't have coding courses in high school, so I wasn't really, I didn't breach in that area. I wasn't exposed to it. But in college, I went to school for animation, which is hilarious because I'm terrible at animation. And it was fun. I enjoyed it, but I was slow, and I'm not a good artist. So, but I kind of just wanted to do something with computers. I always knew I kind of liked computers, but I didn't know like what to do. And I wanted to be a little bit more creative than just like what I thought computer engineering was. So I did take a gen ed science course, and it was a elementary programming course that counted as a science credit. And immediately in the first class, I remember sitting there being a little bit intimidated because I walked in, it was just all guys. And I'm like, man, this is like really guy heavy and whatever. And I'm sitting there and they're all talking about the computers that they built a year ago and how they've been programming since they were 4 and all these words I didn't understand. I was a little, I'm like, I don't know if I belong here. But the professor walks in and he like drew a tic-tac-toe board and he talked through how a computer would program a tic-tac-toe game. And I'm like, this is crazy. I was immediately hooked. It was a whole new way of thinking. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And I added computer science as a major. I ended up keeping the previous one, which turned out to be good because it introduced me to pinball in this weird way. So it all in the end made sense.
Did you play pinball as a child? Did you?
No, my first, I played Space Cadet pinball, which is awesome. Windows 95, that stuff's great. But and a Fisher Price pinball machine at my cousin's house that was like plastic.
Fisher Price.
Oh yeah, But no, in terms of pinball, I didn't play a real machine. My first machine I can actually remember playing was a Lord of the Rings, my sophomore year in college.
Really? Really? So
yeah.
As a child, not on the boardwalk, nowhere encountered pinball that you can remember. So literally wasn't until your later years. You say college, was it? Or
Yep, college. Yeah.
Literally didn't play any pinball till college, and then now you're better pinball player than me from your rank. I can tell you that. So that's pretty impressive.
Thank you.
And So what I want to talk about today, because we just have a short time, and I want to talk about what it's like, how you got with Stern. You've told that story before, but I want to know what it's like a day in your life. Do you just like wake up? Did you wake up this morning and go, D&D, I need to make a mode for D&D, or what how did this happen? How do you come up with this? What is a day in the life of Elizabeth Gieske? What does she do as a Stern programmer? What happens?
Yeah. I mean, it depends on the day, but so like, I mean, is this a game that has already come out or a game that we're still working on and is in pre-development? But on the daily, it's more of a weekly thing, I feel like. It takes me about a week to lay down a groundwork for a new mode or something, and then another week to make it appear to be in a way finished, like testable. So it kind of takes for me like 2 weeks to get a bare a bare mode in, and it takes about a month to get a fleshed out, usually like a complicated mode done, right? Unless I'm like burning and I'm just on fire and I'm like, I need to get this done.
So are you like any other creative person? Like Taylor Swift, say she wake up in the middle of the night, she's got an idea, she runs to the piano. Is that how this happens for you?
Oh yeah, gosh. If you could see how many notebooks I have just like scattered around my condo, it's like a crazy person lives here. I have all these like little pieces of paper and these little notebooks I keep everywhere. I gotta make sure this doesn't say
That's
anything.
awesome.
But yeah, this is the
Okay.
D&D one.
What? Oh,
Um,
okay. Okay.
yeah, I have someone gave this notebook to me actually at Expo. I don't even think they knew who I was, but I'm like, I'm going to be writing stuff into this, and there's going to be a lot of
So
good.
you do a lot of handwritten. You're not taking like in your phone or noting in your. You like to write.
Well, I have that too. I have the Notes app, and I Slack myself messages to remember later ideas. I've attempted to like color code blue and black here. Um, yeah, this is all D&D stuff, so this is fine. But yeah, it's just like,
Yeah.
party doesn't heal during this time. I gotta fix that and add grace period to this lich shot, and the lich moves too fast, and just crazy.
So how does but how does that actually work? Is what I'm curious about. How do
Yeah,
you decide you want to put a you've been tasked with a mode. Share with me the way it works. So I know Dwight's the primary guy. So like does he just say, "Hey Elizabeth, come up with some modes," or how does it become where
yeah. So initially, different for every project. But with D&D, um, Dwight has this overarching story in his head of how it's going to work and everything. But he doesn't know how the pinball is going to be like played, right? That's kind of, details we'll figure out later type of thing, which is so crazy. D&D is so special in that the story is the primary, and then like, okay, let's now create the game. But so yeah, at first you have to you have to start with a clear idea of what you want to put in the game. Like the worst thing in the world is when you have this like generic, like just general idea, and you're like some sort of single ball roving shots, maybe, or whatever. With computing and programming, I mean, you have to be extremely specific on what you like. The game isn't going to make itself. You have to tell every single detail and code it in. So first I'll start with just writing out the entire idea, because if I don't start there, then it's just not going to get started at all. You really can't. So that's why I do have all these notebooks, and I write it out. And so, for example,
Are you pitching this to
it
Dwight?
depends. No, actually, I'm not. Dwight had a lot of trust, maybe too much. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm coming out with these crazy ideas. But I was pretty much left to my own devices on how I wanted to write out the mode. With D&D, I wanted to be really like thematic. So I don't have it behind me, but I used to keep the monster manual like right here next to me, and I would open it up and I would read about the monster, and I'm like, oh, they have this thing called Earth Glide. Okay, I'm gonna try to work that into the game, and I'm gonna use the shaker motor and stuff. And oh yeah, that would be cool. And like, oh, the Lich, he can turn invisible. That's one of his spells. I'm like, oh, okay, so that will work really great here. And we'll have these perception checks, and that will be in the targets. So I'm trying to translate everything, but I'm writing it all down first.
Mhm.
And then I have to talk to the artists, especially D&D, which is completely in-house. All of the art was had to be done by somebody. We couldn't just steal it from a movie. It was so much easier. Well, hard with Jaws in some ways and easier with Jaws in other ways. But that's a different story. With how that with everything, you have to find a video that matches what you're trying to do. So it's kind of a little backwards here. But now I'm like, okay, I have this idea, and now I can just tell the artist, like, okay, so I have this idea. Let's say I'm writing a mode with the for example, the Abishai attack. It's this ranged idea where you need to shoot a shot and then use a ranged weapon to attack the monsters. And I'm like, it's really important that the screen says like use action button. And they're like, what should it show? So I have to be thinking while I'm writing the rules, like what should be displayed on the pinball game that would actually make sense here. So we were kind of like, well, it might make sense for the arrows to be dipped in silver. And I'm like, it's kind of static. That's not quite right. And, this and that. We finally landed on this like first person view of the arm and with the bow, and it has silver on it, and you're drawn back. So it feels like you're the one shooting the bow and arrow. So I was rather proud of that one. I'm like, oh, thank goodness, so much
So are they
sweating. I
doing?
figured that out.
Are the artists doing all the animation portion, or are you having to do some of that as well? I mean, where they're just giving you the files and you're just mapping it to your program to the events as they
Yeah.
happen. Is that what's occurring as a certain event happens? I'm imagining you're playing with the glass off so that you could roll a ball up over hit a switch or whatever. That's how you're doing it, right? You're triggering these switches, and then you must have like a laptop or computer
Mhm.
somehow connected, probably right to the machine.
Yeah, I'm directly connected. I can debug, which means I can stop the game somewhere and check the code and check all the variables and then step through everything and see what's going on. The display is tricky. It's hard. There's a lot of knobs and little entry points. Looking at it literally gives me a headache because it's just so much text. There's like
Wow.
when it's just crazy to look at. It was really hard to learn at first. I'm like, what the heck is going on? A lot of copy and pasting in the beginning, but now I can kind of
It's
figure it
all
out.
Visual C plus, right? C plus you're doing all this
It's
in?
C++, yeah.
Yeah.
And with the display, we use something called Radium. And so with a display, I mean, gosh, displays take so long to get right because you have to, the video clip is a thing, and you have to make sure you're playing the right one. It might be in an array, and then you have to keep track of the index of where you are and make sure you're not out of the bounds. Or maybe certain awards have certain videos that are like specific. It takes a lot of time to get everything mapped out
0 is
correctly.
1, 1 is 2.
Yeah, it's all zeros and ones, but yeah, it starts from zero. That can trip a beginner up.
Arrays was something I always people had trouble with. Like punch is 0. 0 is the first dynamo.
Yeah,
It's not really 1, but
yeah, it's
yeah,
really smart. It's
yeah,
really smart to start with zero because you
yeah.
can. I use something called the modulus. It's on everybody's calculator, but no one really knows what to do with it. It's odd. I'm like, guys, there's this awesome thing, and no one uses it. But I'm gonna pull it up here. It's called the modulus. It's right there. This little
Yep,
percentage sign.
yep.
Um, but it gives you the remainder of a division. So say I have an array of 5,
Hmm.
and my award is the 8th award, but I only have 5 elements. So I will just 5 mod that 8, and it will return other way, other way. Yeah, it returns the
Yeah.
remainder of 3. But doing this, you're always going to be return something within the bounds of your size of the array. That's like super in depth. That's
Yeah.
weird,
Yeah,
but
that's well. We're going. I hope we would go some places that you haven't gone.
yeah, I've
So,
never shared that, but
yeah,
that's
well,
how
that's
I do
cool.
it.
That's
I
cool.
like to use the modulus to make sure
That's
I'm still in the bounds. That's just the video clip, you know?
yeah,
Then you have
yeah.
the animation. You might have a sound effect that plays on a certain frame, so you got to line that up right. You have this light show it might be only that might be played outside of the bounds of the whole clip and the animation, and you want to match things up. It's a lot of trial and error, and it takes that's it the majority of my time is spent trying to get the display correct. It takes a long
Really?
time.
Really?
Yeah.
So the actual
Mhm.
interacting with what's happening, the switches on the game, that part's the easier part, you're
That's the
saying.
easy part. Yeah. The easy part is writing the rule. The easy part is implementing the rule. That's even easier. And then, yeah, the hard part is getting what we call the polish done or the
Mhm.
choreography figured out. That takes a long time. And then testing takes just as amount. Like testing and getting the display is really time intensive.
So let's go back in time for a minute to Jaws, since that's where you started, right? That you've been working for Stern about a year and 10 months, 11 months, is that about right?
Yeah, a year and a half. That's about right.
Okay. So, I mean, you've told the story in other streams how you got with Stern, and you got originally got, but maybe you could briefly just touch on it in case somebody's listening here and hasn't heard that, how you actually landed the position. That might be
Mm.
an interesting place.
Yeah, sure. Oh, I see a comment, Todd. You need to increase your volume, by the way.
Is my
But
volume bad? Normally I'm so low that they can't.
I hear you fine, but I think our levels are just not the same. So,
Well, you should
um,
be louder anyway, Elizabeth. They want to
oh,
hear you, not
well,
me.
we'll see. I don't know. Hearing my own voice talk, ish. But yeah, okay. So the initial getting this job, so weird. Oh my gosh. I was sort of known, I suppose, in some circles of like, yeah, she's that person that can play pinball pretty well, and she also programs, which is, two things that you really do need to be able to have a software developer position. Being able to play pinball and understand how things work with rules and why it's fun. Why is a big thing that I'm like, why is that fun? And how do we, if it's not fun, how do you make it better? Anyways, I was living in Louisville at the time, and there's a great pinball community there. I would hang out this place called Rec Bar. There's like 80 games on site, and we have tournaments every Sunday. So I was there, and a guy named Corey Stupp, who is a Louisville native, who happens to work for Stern as a contractor. Um, I began talking with him, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I programmed this machine. We're standing in front of Godzilla," and I'm like, "What?" Like he's like, "Yeah, I did the Geigen mode." And I'm like, "This is crazy." I'm like, "What language do you write in?" And all this stuff, and I'm like, how much work is this? And then because I never really considered how much programming, and I don't think I really knew before doing this. I don't think anyone could know how much goes into a pinball machine in terms of software,
Hmm.
which is a real shame because it's just beautifully architected. A lot of the software is. Anyways, I digress. But like after maybe 5 years of knowing Corey, he reached out and said, "Oh, actually, it was really encrypted, like this cryptic message of, hey, seek me out at Expo and let's talk about pinball." I'm like, okay, like sure.
Meet
I
me in the
sought him
corner
out.
to talk about Stern.
Yeah, I'm like gosh, if it was anybody else, I'd be like, no, what are you talking about? Like, whatever. But no, we meet, and it took a while for us to meet, but we finally did. And he's
And
like, do
he
you know
gave you the
why?
super secret handshake to get in. Is that how it went,
Oh
Elizabeth?
yeah, totally. No, we were at this great burrito place. It was so I was just happy to be there, and I'm gonna eat my delicious burrito. But
You see George
no,
Gomez with a taco in the background, and Keith
that would
Elwin
have
there
been
with a burrito.
surprising. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. No, actually, I'll tell you this. I was really hesitant on accepting any position or even entertaining the idea of working for because I took this. I'm like, all right, what do I know about the video game industry? It's a lot of work, and it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of work. Like that's what I knew. And pinball is different than video games, but it's very similar. So I talked to Corey about it. I'm like, I'm nervous about the work-life balance, and what if I care about this thing too much? Which all is true and very valid. And I'm glad that I thought these thoughts and prepared myself, because if I came in thinking this was going to be easy or that I was going to have my same life that I did before, I would have been wrong. But even with all of that stuff and talking with Corey, I'm like, if I'm going to do this, I want to make sure, like, how much of a say do I have on these things? Am I just coding like somebody else's game, or do I have a creative input on this? And if any point I was like, if I would have gotten a no on any of these concerns of like, do I have a say? And if he was like, no, it's not really like that, I'm like, I'm out. I'm not gonna do this. It's not worth it. But with every step, we met for like 3 hours. We were talking for 3 hours, and everything was like, oh, okay, like yes, this is what I would want it to be. This feels worth it. I should try this out. I want to see if I can be any good at it. Plus, he was like, well, the interviews would be with George Gomez, and he's like saying all these names. I was like, oh yeah, I could interview, like sure, like talk with all these people. Yeah, why not? So yeah, there was like 3 interviews or maybe 4, and each with a different team. So like Keith and Rick was
Did
one
they
of
ask you any
them.
strange like interview questions? Any odd something? Anything you remember? Like, hey, can you give us the square root of? No, what did they throw any weird interview question at you that like stuck out in your mind? Like, wow, this is.
No, it was concerningly not. It was concerningly not about software. Like they didn't ask me any software or math related or anything like that. Anything that I was used to, which I would have gladly. At the end, I was like, "Do you guys want to ask me a programming question?" And I think Rick ended up did. He's like, what's the benefit of C++? And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's a fine
So
question
is
to
Rick
answer.
Nagel ultimately who you report to, or is it George, or who, or is it changed based on who the project lead is, or how does that how does that how do you who do you answer to with your work that you do?
Yeah, it feels like I have 3 different people at sometimes, but my first is Mark Guidarelli. He was the first person I actually interviewed with, along with George, and he's kind of in charge of all of the software people. So I would first report to him. But yeah, in terms of like a project, the with D&D, it felt like I reported to Dwight in a lot of ways, and with Jaws, I reported with Keith in a lot of ways. Like, and Rick, of course, if Rick were to tell me to do something, I'd do it. But if Keith were to tell me, I'd be like, man, I really got to get that done. And then if George kind of comes in and if he tells anybody it needs to be this way, then like the whole thing is going to change and make sure that George gets his way on that. So there's a lot of, it's not really hierarchy, but yeah, I suppose it is kind of like that. It's a business, so there's
Sure,
yeah,
sure. So
yeah.
you're purely contract, or you're because I know you work remotely, but just trying to understand the structure,
Mhm.
or so do you ever have to go to the office and work there, or is everything 100% remote?
I am fully remote. I am a full employee, so not contracted. And I do go to Stern maybe like 4 times a year. Kind of, I like to go when a game is launched. Um,
Mhm.
Definitely when the game that I worked on was launched. So
Sure.
D&D, I went up for a week, and then the Pinball Expo is like a whole thing. So we go up. Everybody comes in for that.
TPF, are you going in 2 weeks or 3 weeks?
I don't know. I haven't been told. Last year I did, but I think that's just because Keith was unable to go. So they're like, all right, we'll stick Elizabeth in there. Um, it was really fun though. It was a good time.
Well, if you're there, I'm sure you'll meet some folks in it. By the way, the folks in the chat, let me make sure I open it up to you guys in the chat. If you have questions, and a few of them have come in, Elizabeth is watching it, and she's got full permission to grab any of your questions. I think the next one
Yeah.
we're going to get to might be a little sticky. So, if there's one in particular you saw you wanted to answer real quick?
Yeah, I can rapid fire.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
But yeah, when do you consider the code is complete? Um, it's never really complete. Even when it reaches 1.0, there might be some other stuff. But in the beginning, you have. That's why it's so important to have like a roadmap of where you want the game to be, or else it's just going to balloon into huge amount of work. But I mean, it's already a lot of work. But yeah, in the beginning, you write out this thing. It's like a code document, but it's like the overview of what the software should be. And once all of those things are done, then yeah, I guess it's code complete. But that's kind of huge. What I consider as 1.0 code complete is all the inserts are doing something, and if an insert says Ritual of the Chosen is done. If it says Great White, then Great White is done. And all the inserts need to have something. If all the inserts do something, in my mind, code complete. But we might still be working on it. And then someone else, can you talk a little bit more about incorporating music and audio assets with how that works in Stern programming. That's actually a lot. That's a big question. I think we might have to go back to that one later. But that's a whole. It's like with the art, you have to talk with the artist, and with the sound. I'm like, I'll send it off to Jerry Thompson, or the sound. I call him the sound guy. I'm sure the sound designer, and I usually have to have some sort of like with the art too, you have this vision and it's like, yeah, so I want the bow and arrow like this. And with the sound guy, I'm like, I want this specific like sound, or, a click,
The dice sound in D&D
whatever.
is cool, by the way. When you rip that spinner and the dice, I don't know whose sound that is, but that's a cool sound when you're.
Oh, the spinner's a great sound. You got to have a good sound on the spinner. Very important. But yeah, I think I'm caught up here.
Okay,
Primary
so
coding language is C++.
the code. Let's talk about that for a minute. This is a delicate area, so I'll try to phrase this carefully here. One of the things that people ask about, or I've heard many times from players, is these things launch. And I know you as the programmer wish everything was done right when it launched, right?
Mhm.
You want to launch this game and everything to be 1.0 or not. Is that sort of the mindset of, hey, we need to workshop this with the pinball community. We need to be at a certain stage, and then no, we need to get feedback from the public to finish this. We
Mm.
know where we want to go, but I mean, you am I making myself clear, or am I just
Yeah, I
all over the
understand.
place? Okay.
Yeah, no. I think I've only been in the industry for a year and a half, so it's yeah. This is just me speaking here. But we definitely, I know for sure, try to get the game as complete as possible for release. And we are pushing the limit on how much we can get into a machine. But it's not just if we miss a release, that's a huge problem. It can be your grounds on breaching a contract. You might have issues with like licensing contracts. I'm talking about, you might have we have a whole line, and if the line isn't working, then that's a huge loss. Feeding the beast, as they call it, you got to make sure that
So
everything
it's
is
it's
running.
generated by production schedule, because I used to
Yeah,
work at a
schedules.
candy
Yeah.
plant. So it's
Okay.
purely like, we got to have X game, whatever it is, just not talking about specific, but X game on January 1st. We got to have that game. We got to
Hmm.
have X game 2 by April 1st. And wherever you're at in the code at that point in time, that's pretty much what you got to do. Is that am I understanding that correctly? Is that how?
I mean, that's what are allotted. It's where I know we're making pushes to get the code more complete. And D&D, it's so big. It's such a big game. That game is like 4 games in one. It's so massive. There was just no way they were going to get it to 1.0. But I think we're really lucky to have like the community so receptive. And I think it's a really special thing. I think it's really cool that I get to have this plug into the community, and they get to say something, and then on the next update, they get to see that thing implemented. It's a unique thing that I would be a loss if it was at 1.0 and we were really strict about, all right, 1.0, no more work on this game. We got it, we're moving on. But we want to see this game as good as possible. And I know that I have a lot of good ideas, but I know that a lot of other people have equally as good, if not better. And it's humbling a lot of times when I see a comment and I'm like, oh, that's so much better than the better idea that I had. All right,
Really?
let's do it.
Really?
I'm gonna stick
So the
that in there.
community has given, can you think of an awesome idea for Jaws or Dungeons and Dragons that the community gave you? Somebody, can you think off the top of your head of something
Oh
that got
yeah,
into the actual, could you share with us, please? What
yeah.
what what
Like
one of or more of those might have been?
I can't recall if we were already had the idea and we were going to get to it, but with the online forums and stuff being so vocal, we decided to at least quicken it to make sure it was in, because it was kind of a great idea, but it was the night modes for night swim and night search in Jaws to have the playfield dim while you're in those night modes to match what
Mhm.
was going on with the video. So I remember there was not like a huge upcry, like, oh, we got to get this in. But I'm like, hey, this is good. Like, let's do it. So Keith was like, yeah, okay. But in competition mode, it's going to be lit. I'm like, okay, whatever. So we'll have a handshake agreement on that one. And yeah, I think a lot of times it's ideas that I did have, but maybe didn't want to prioritize because I wasn't, it's hard to gauge how important this aspect is to a player.
So let's
But
say
once you see it, yeah, throw it in.
let's say today, Elizabeth, that you came up with an idea today for Dungeons and Dragons that wasn't in there. What's the realistic chance? How long from today to we see it out here in the game? How long? What do you think is a realistic amount of time that something like? Are we talking a month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months? It just
Mhm.
depends.
I mean,
Or
ironically, it's sometimes it's the day of. I put it in. I'm like, I read it. There was especially with bugs. Someone says like this isn't working, and I'm like, oh, immediately fix. That's high priority. With ideas, it depends on how large the ask is. So, it'll be like, oh my goodness, like let's just put a whole new mode in here, right? And like we just can't get to that, or maybe it's too much on the artists, and because a lot of the ask might be more in that realm. But with anything that's like strictly software and it's under my control, it's a huge responsibility. I take it really seriously to make sure that this game is getting is pleasing to everybody that is buying or playing the game. But it's all up to the code update, right? And usually code updates are like a monthly
is that a
thing.
marketing person, or is that somewhere above you that decides when those things are pushed out?
It's
Like,
usually the software lead will determine, because you don't want to rush an update. You're gonna be ending up rushing something that might be broken, because you're not taking the time to test it. Like, sure, I can get something fixed in programs like pretty quickly, but like I said before, testing is takes longer than actually implementing a change. So yeah, I don't think you want to have something that is constantly updating because you're likely going to get broken stuff if you do. You really do have to go through the proper,
sure.
creation, the ideation, implement.
Is there anybody else that helps you in turn? Are there other contract people? I know you're not contract person. But are there other people within Stern you gotta get hand this off to? Hey, play this for 25 times in this mode, or
Mm.
no? Is it pretty much you're the primary the, as you're doing it to get the testing?
Yeah, we do have some co-testers they're very good pinball players, and we have a lot of trust in them to test the game. D&D is really hard to test though, because it's like something might be broken one week and not the other because of the how the seed works with the random numbers. Also, it might be broken at level 10, but not level 5, right? So you have to make sure everything works for across all of the levels. And then what if you're on a multiplayer game? What if you're in co-op mode? What if you're on Ball 2? What if you hit it in Grace? Whatever it is, there's just a lot of things that you got to think through when you're testing. So I would say that the person that created the mode is the best person to work on it because they're less likely to fall into might misinterpret something that's already there. So it is best if the original creator is the one to work on it. And then the initial round of testing is also best if that initial person writing the code also tests it because they have given it the most thought and has the deepest understanding of what's going on, and maybe some things that one might not think about, like, oh, what if multi-ball is running against the grace period thing, and then yeah, pass it off to one of our testers, and then it finally is like, okay, yeah, this is good.
So it's not like a management decision on when these things are getting pushed out. It's the software lead is after it's been tested and deemed. Those aren't on schedule, I guess, is what I'm asking. Like, because it seems like Jaws, right? We're waiting for the final. Some are waiting for the final. I'm sure it's probably done. I'm not going to ask you if it is or not, but it seems like it's been over a year. So somebody's decided when that's going to happen somewhere, or you don't know? That's above really
It
what
does,
you're.
it's still a matter of scheduling. Resources have to go in other directions. Like, Jaws lost me at some point because I needed to be on D&D, and frankly, I probably need to be on D&D a little bit sooner, right? Even though as much as I wanted to get Jaws across that finish line, it's the next game is demanding, and you gotta switch over. And also Jaws, my goodness, Jaws would have been at 1.0 so long ago if it weren't for the the 16-bit mode that took
Mhm.
3 months
It was an
to
amazing mode, by the way. Amazing mode.
incredible. Oh my gosh,
Jaws
the
the
gold.
Revenge. If you haven't played it, great mode. I call it one of, if not the best, it's one of the best challenge modes ever in
Oh
pinball.
my gosh, yeah,
With
yeah, hands down, yeah. But
smashing the button and what an incredible experience that
yeah,
is. Great.
100%.
How involved is that? Like, were you heavily involved in that mode, or how much?
No, I at that point when that mode was being created, I was busy trying to finish everything else about Jaws, right? Like the actual game. So Rick, it was pretty much all Rick because
Wow.
with the assets, the sound, having to replace everything. You have another game. This game has two games,
I
right?
know. It's awesome.
So
And
it's
Shark Hunter. Let's
incredible.
not forget Shark Hunter. Shark Hunter's a game.
Shark Hunter took a long time, and I mean the topper mode took. I did that for a while as well. So there's a lot of things that were kind of on the side of peripheral of what the main game was, but it's just so cool that we
You
had
guys
to.
did it. I feel like Jaws
Yeah.
launched in a good place. The code, just telling you thank you for the code at this point that launched. Other games, it's rough and some, but now I'm understanding a little bit better with what you're saying that you got to meet a certain schedule. The schedule is set, and you kind of got to do with what resources you have. What is the sizes of these teams? I mean, are we talking like Pinside only gives credit to Rick Nagel and you? And originally, I didn't even see you on Jaws. I was kind of angry, Elizabeth. I'm like, I know Elizabeth Gieske is doing programming on Jaws. Why is she not listed? And then you did get listed. Eventually, somebody must have got you in there finally.
Yeah, I
So
don't think I'm on like Pinsider. I think it still just says Rick, which is fine. I always say like with Jaws, Keith and Rick carried the couch and I carried the cushions. Cushions are important, but it is a lot of Rick. But the teams are small. These are really complex systems, and not always. It's not always the case when you add more people that the job is going to get done faster. It's so the with Jaws, we had me, Rick, or Mike Kizavat did some of the stuff, or a lot of stuff, a lot of like instant info, bonus, skill shot, and then Brett Rubin did all the light shows, and he's just he's really good at light shows. I don't understand the code at all. I looked at it, I'm like, I don't know where I am. Whatever. Later, I learned there's a simplified way of doing it, but his way is very cool
hmm.
and it works really great. Those light shows and Jaws are fantastic. Anyways, yeah, so that was the software team. I don't think I'm forgetting anybody that helped
Wow.
out.
So you're talking
Yeah.
3 or 4. You look at these video games with 150 people on it. Jaws has 5 or 4. Like what? I mean,
Yeah, it's a
uh,
lot. Yeah, and it was the same
wow.
with D&D. It was Dwight, me, David Sullivan, and then Corey Stepp. Corey does a lot of the heavy lift. He's if we're moving a couch, he's moving the room. He's
Wow.
making sure the room's going to come along with. Yeah, he does a lot of the devices. He does a lot of the mechanical stuff. And he does a lot with the display. So D&D works as well as it does because of people like Corey, and especially Corey.
Yeah, the modes are undersold. I see a comment in the chat about advertising those modes. I don't I wish more every game had these modes. Like a Shark Hunter or a video mode. Dungeons and Dragons, I was thinking, okay, yeah, man, there's so many opportunities here, but yeah, you got to get somebody to code it.
Yeah,
And
and you
and
have to have the vision for it too. Like right from the beginning, you have to know what the game is going to entail. The 16-bit or the 8-bit mode was I thought of and in the works and in the plan, I mean, since the beginning. but we had to finish the game or get the game nearly finished before we could start on challenge modes.
So what code, somebody's asked here, do you like to work on most? Light. You just said the lights. You're not
I
thrilled with
keep talking
lights.
about things I'm not good at. I don't love doing the display, and I don't love
Max, do
doing
you
the
want
light.
to do you want to make the dragon go up and down? Is that sounds like that's
Oh,
core.
I'm
That's core.
not good at mechs. I can work them. That's not why I enjoy it. I think when I said the implementation of rules is the fastest thing that I get through is because it's for me the most fun thing to do. I love when I have a blank slate and I'm like, all right, time to get these trolls done. That is my happy place. I love it when it's just a pure, you're implementing a rule that you just wrote. That's so much fun. And that's when I get to have the most creative um, process or whatever. I don't know what I'm saying. Anyways, it's fun for me as a programmer to figure out how to get this working in code. And that, like, oh man, it's so cool. Like, and that's the thing that I can't share with people because you have to know so much about the code base and about programming in general. Like, I was really proud of Jaws' 4th of July mode. That was really cool in the code. It looks cool. It's fun to play, but like,
It's a great mode.
oh man, it's all timers. There's this array of timers and these callback functions for when the timer is expired so the grace period can start, and then a callback function on the grace period to make sure that the lights do what they're supposed to and the mode progresses as it should. And then there's a lot of careful coding I had to do with when something is hit in gray so it retracts properly, and all of this stuff. So much consideration went into the 4th of July mode. I was really proud with how well it worked. And it was one of those things I did quickly because I just enjoyed it so much.
Well, I think the elephant in the room would be this. I mean, as you can see, I'm an old white guy. That's me. That's what I am, and that's supposedly who buys all these machines. Okay, it's my, and I push back on that idea, but I suppose it's true because I've been playing since I was 5-6 years old. I'm not like you. I got to call. I've been playing these all along. I've played all different versions of them. But you are special. You are special in this. What do you want to say to other young women or that want to get into doing what you're doing? It's exciting to see you in the position you're in. It's somewhat of a rarity, right? You said earlier that it felt like a little bit of a boys, like there was a lot of boys. You see where I'm going with this? Where I'm asking? It's like, how do you get more women into this? How do we get more to come and do what you're doing? Because it's exciting to see.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's beginning to flip. There's a lot of programs in high schools now that introduce coding at a younger age, that's open for everybody. I think there was a kind of a gate. It was a little gate kept because you never see an engineer. You never you just don't visually see this. You see your doctor, you see your dentist, you see like these professions. But for something like software, it's so hidden by nature of what software is. It's behind the scenes. So I don't think there was a lot of like there was not a lot of impressions on people that this was even a thing. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions with what software is, and they're scary, and everyone thinks it's called code. Like, what is this? Like, that's so mystical, and so people are like, I'm not smart enough to do that, and I'm not good at math, and I'm like, I'm not good at math either. That's what calculators are for. That's not what we're doing here. We're thinking, and it's all about just being able to break down complex problems into simple steps, and that's what it is. So really, I just think you gotta get past that intimidation factor, and you gotta believe, like, if this other person can figure it out, so can I. And if this person can learn, then the capacity of learning, like, we can do anything, right? Like, I didn't know how to program a pinball machine, but it was like, I'm afraid to try, right? You got to say no. You got to just go in, and if Rick can do it, I can,
Sure.
and
Sure.
try it out and not be afraid to fail. Like if you aren't failing, you're not learning. Okay.
Mhm.
If you were, I was skiing with my cousin once. He was learning to snowboard, and by the end of the day, I asked him, how it went, and he's like, it was a good day, but I didn't fall the entire time. And I'm like, well, isn't that good? And he's like, no, I didn't learn anything. I didn't improve at all because he wasn't pushing himself to the point of failure. Okay. And being comfortable with that idea is that's what's going to allow you to be in a position where I am now. You just have to be comfortable with pushing that and being okay. Like, I'm going to try this and we're going to see how it is, and just be confident that, like, if you do fall, you're going to learn from it. You're not going to make that same mistake again. You're going to go forward. So, anyways, I don't remember what their initial question was.
Well, no, it's just more or less how to get more people like you. I was into the hobby, more women into key positions of companies. When you're coming up with modes for games that are out right now, that's a pretty key position, I would say. And it's
Yeah.
neat to see. I'm excited for it. Congratulations and thank you for being into the community and interested in this and being a part of this. I don't think guys like me are not going around, oh, well, we just need more guys like me doing this. No, that's not what's really happening. I don't believe that to be the case.
I mean,
So,
I don't think in terms of like we need more of this person. I just think we need more people that love what they're doing.
mhm,
That'd be great. Like, I want more
yeah.
people that are just on fire for this stuff.
Yeah, well,
That
you
I
said you didn't get into this originally. You were going to be, what was it, an animator? You said earlier you were going to get into
Yeah,
animation. And
yeah.
it's interesting you had a career shift like that to more of a technical role. I
Mhm.
find that fascinating, and I just wondered why more people might have had that. It looks like somebody's trying a huge ask. You have a minute to answer direct questions. How to showcase your work to such a niche community. You ran into this guy. Corey was his name. What was the
Mhm.
guy?
Yeah, core
You
stuff.
Corey, yeah. Is he just at shows? He's the guy that's deep in the mines coding, right? So he probably never comes out very often out of coding, right?
It
He's
is a problem.
stuck.
We're always stuck inside coding.
He never
I
gets out
mean,
much to
yeah,
showcase it.
Raymond Davidson, he's more in the public. He's like at shows and stuff all the time. No, I lucked into meeting Corey, and I don't know how you're supposed to go around meeting somebody that's in this specific position. I definitely just fell, head first into it. But I don't think it starts with, you have to learn how to love where you are, regardless of if you care about the product that you're making or not. Like, I was just as happy for different reasons, but I was really happy with the position I had at my previous job and the job that I had previous to that. And I think, a lot of people, it's great to have goals and aspirations and trying to get to, a specific thing.
Mhm.
But if you're not ever enjoying where you are now, I doubt you're going to enjoy, your end goal or whatever, because then where's your motivation? But I don't know. I think it's, of course I want more people in playing pinball, but I don't really associate
Wouldn't
that
that be though, Elizabeth?
directly.
Wouldn't be like playing in the tournaments, go to the Stern, try to become really good like Raymond Davidson and that. I mean, that's one way to get noticed in a hurry
Oh
to get
yeah,
on the register.
if
Showing
your
your
goal
logo.
is, sure, yeah. No, if your goal is to, I know what I want, and I'm like, that's so cool that people do have that. I just never did, of, having a key, like, right here, point on it with a pin, like, this is where I want to be. But yeah, no, if you want to be where I am now, I suppose you can try what I did and see if you have, the as much like as I. And I think it is. No, for most everybody that works at Stern works here because they knew somebody else. It's all about who you know, for sure,
Yeah,
for sure.
George has said in interviews too that they like you like Stern is about people that are in the hobby play. They like to hire people that are in the. So if you want to get in this, play pinball, be out there playing, get
Yeah.
involved locally, get places that don't have Insider Connect, become a what is it, the Stern Army. I would assume you would become one of those people for a business that has a bunch of Stern machines, organize tournaments, get on the radar. I would think that's the first thing to be noticed.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. You got to be a champion for pinball. Oh yeah. You got to be not a doubt. And I think if you really want to be like, all right, I'm going to take this thing to the next level. I don't want to just be playing it. I want to be making it. Then guess where Keith Elwin started, right? He created a homebrew and there is no better teacher than to do it. Like doing the thing. If you're making a thing, if you make a virtual pinball machine because you're not confident with like machinery, I'm sure not, then yeah, that speaks volumes. And
Great question in the chat, Elizabeth. How many times have you beat Keith Elwin? He must be the best person to beat playing. He has to be.
Beats?
Yeah, beat playing. Oh, who's your favorite person at Stern to beat? That's a wonderful question. I like that.
Oh yeah, I have kind of took a step of letting go of points, I think. Actually, if I do beat him, I hardly notice because we're just having fun and we're usually doing something super stupid. Like he has a sea witch in his office and all we were trying to do was like alley pass or something. And it's like, that's not how you play the game, but that's what we were doing. We were like tap passing and he always comes up. He's always thinking rules, of course, we all are. And he's like, do you think there's a way? He's like, no, he never poses things as questions.
So Elwin has a Sea Witch, but yet George Gomez did Beatles, which is based on Sea Witch. How did that work? How does that occur?
Yeah, I don't know if the Sea Witch was there at the same time. He has a bunch of games in his office. It's funny. He's supposed to be in his office with Rick, but the pinball machines, like Rick's desk is like cuddled away in this corner, like around an 8-ball deluxe.
Nice. You don't need a desk at a pinball company. You just use a pinball as a desk, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We have about 8 minutes left. I want you to think of a question you wish, Elizabeth, in the next 8 minutes that somebody had asked you that's never asked you. You're like, I keep waiting for somebody to ask me this and nobody has. So ponder that question. What might be something that you just wish somebody would have in one of these interviews, which by the way, you've been wonderful and we really appreciate having you today. Thank you for coming and thank you to George if you're watching somewhere. Hopefully I didn't get her in trouble. I'm not trying to, but hopefully trying to discover things in areas we haven't been in and you haven't really had a chance to speak about. It's exciting that what you're doing. And I think that I hope that they will continue to. What is your dream? I guess that's my question. What is your dream? Do you want to someday design one of these? Is that the next level for you? Would you like to be the next Keith Elwin on a machine? Or
I don't know. That's I'm not. You got to know like who you are, and I don't think playfield design is who I am. But because it's just I don't get as excited about the toys and the mechs and the flow and all of the stuff that you should be with pinball. I've always been just crazy about a rule, just something small, and I'm like, wow, that spinner just spun and it gave me this amount of points and it did that because I worked at it and I shot these shots and it made it happen. So I mean, yeah, I think being the lead software on a project and being able to write a complete rule set and be in control of everything in terms of
is there a dream theme? I mean, you supposedly did you really watch 500 hours of Critical Role? That you really heard that in that?
Yeah, well, unprovoked, I did that before I started working at Stern. I listened to the entire first campaign of Critical Role.
And who in your family's good at chocolate chip cookies? Totally random.
Oh yeah, that would be my mother. She is. It's making a name for herself.
If I don't bring this up, I'm derelict in my duties as an interviewer. If I don't mention the dirty two-letter word. Do you know which two-letter word I'm talking about? Starts with an A. AI.
What? Oh yeah.
Yeah. Is there any world of which you're adopting into your like using AI in the code? is there any world of which that is at all desirable to you? Most people,
No.
no. Okay.
No, it, like I said, it would it would suck in the joy out of this thing, you know? Why would I want some program to program for me? Like what? That's not fun. And it would be so lazy. Half of the things that I do is because I want to figure out how to do it, and
Mhm.
that sparks more creativity and more like I said this before, but the Shark of Broken mode, which is so fun and it's a funky little mode. I only did it because I wanted to learn how to mess with the flippers. You know, like
Yeah,
this
sure.
whole thing
Just
stemmed
screw
because I wanted
everything
to
up.
figure
Yeah.
something out. Being able to struggle with something is the point. Okay, like I don't want this to be easy. If it were, I would stop. Like there wouldn't be a point to do this. No way. AI, no, we're
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
I'm not using it.
So
No way.
there's no directive coming down. I mean, you know the naysayers out there, the negative publicate, the negative thing is like it's turning into AI, and there's no reality in that. There's no direction push
Yeah,
upon
no.
you. Actually, this is somebody actually doing work on these games right now. And you hear AI everywhere. And it's like all of a sudden we're being adopted and every company's just going to use it. Artists want to draw. They want to draw this magnificent artwork themselves.
Yeah.
They don't want to use something that's there. So anyway, it's fascinating. Pixel Titans has given me full confidence in every game she works on. There's a compliment for you.
Oh, that's very sweet.
I told you this is a
That's a lot to
friendly
live
one.
up to. I'll do my best always.
So
But
what haven't you been asked? It's been a few minutes. We only have a couple minutes
mm,
left. As you think of something that you haven't been asked that you wish somebody would have asked you, can you think of anything?
I mean, that's so. I think you know, as they say, like the best gift given is the one you didn't know that you needed. I think the question, I'm sure there's the best question out there. I don't think I'm not aware of it, and I guess I haven't been asked it yet. There's, of course, there's a ton. Like, what's the hardest thing you've ever worked on? And I think the answer would be surprising. I think the hardest thing I did in Jaws was getting the cast and catch background effect to work correctly. It took so long. I had to constantly go back because I didn't do it right. But it's a foreground element that works as a background element, which is already cheating and breaking the rules. And it's this number that's counting up. But having that display be displayed always was really hard. So, but like these answers oftentimes might not be very fun and interesting. So I think for the most part, people are asking the right questions.
So do you play any pranks on each other when you do get in the office? I mean, are you like, leaving something for Keith Allen? Oh, Easter eggs. I didn't ask you about that. What
Oh,
about
Easter eggs.
Easter eggs?
Easter eggs are
Are they
fun.
allowed?
Yeah, they're more than allowed. They're what's the word when you want some?
Encouraged? En-
Yes, encourage. Yes, very much so.
So there
And a
could
lot
be
of
secrets
times
in Jaws we don't know about, or Dungeons and Dragons we don't know about. There
there's a
could
lot
be.
of things that I put in specifically, and I haven't seen anyone like jump through the rooftop and yell it and be like, "This thing is in Jaws," but that's not the point. A lot of times we put Easter eggs just because we want to and we think it's funny and enjoy it. A lot of times those things are found out, like there's a 5% chance that the shark roars like a dinosaur in Jaws.
Indeed.
The knot tying, it displays for a while I just put in a garlic knot, like 5% of the time I might just say garlic knot, but then Mark Guidarelli caught wind of that and added all these other other ones. So we often just went in and added another type of knot, Gordian knot, marriage knot, why not? And then there's like Scars has a clip that only plays if you play the mode perfectly. There's a D&D has a lot as well, like a little nods stuff that isn't in the game yet because the character isn't there. Like the barbarian has a lot of fun lines that he says, and until you unlock them, you won't know about it. But there's a lot of speech in D&D, a ton of speech in D&D, and we still need to get a lot.
More wharf or something probably in there that we haven't gotten.
Yeah,
Amazing
he has some
Dragons
Star
lines.
Trek references. There's some Ghostbuster references. There's We do a lot of
That's great.
referencing. We
Thanks
have a
for
lot
the
of fun.
raid.
That
Yeah.
is great. That is amazing. Elizabeth, thank you so much. You've been a wonderful, I thought this was a very good interview that you did. And I hope, again, that you had a good time. Did you have a good time? Did we relax you? Or
Yeah, this is good. I wasn't nervous, and I don't think I have any regrets of like, oh, why did I say this or whatever. I think this was well done, and this was enjoyable.
I can't wait for this to come up. This will be on playgamesmore.com. And I'm going to transcribe some of this, and I'll remove my cookie references and my battling. But I hope you'll come back when you do another game. Would you come back again someday for us?
Yeah, sure. Reach out. I love talking about pinball.
I think this is great. And if you are a TPF, please say hello. I'll be there with my wife of 35 years and my 2 adult sons. He bought this Jaws game. My son did. He was the first, and now we have 3 of them: Iron Maiden and James Bond, and they
Awesome.
multiply. They're like extra children, my grandchildren.
Yeah, they tend to do that. That's what I hear.
Have a wonderful day out there in Kentucky, and thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, man. This was fun.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day out there. Thanks, Elizabeth. Bye now.
See ya.
See ya.